All right, so here in the United States, it is prom season. And what that means is that there are millions of young men wearing a tuxedo for the first time. Actually, I wouldn't call some of these outfits black tie or tuxedos. Maybe a better word is fun, creative, formal wear. You know, when it comes down to it, I'm just happy to see young men dressing well and having a great time. That being said, it's safe to say many of these young men will don a garment that has a 200-year-old history of seamlessly connecting trousers to a shirt. Yet despite that history, statistically speaking, half of them will wear it incorrectly. And I'm not even going to count these guys. Now, the item I'm talking about comes from Persia. There it was simply known as a waistband, also a kammerband. Now, it eventually made its way into India, where it was worn by the locals, and in the 19th century, adopted by British officers stationed in colonial India. Today, this garment is known as the kammerband. In case you're going to be wearing one, remember, flaps go up. In fact, an easy way to remember that is your prom ticket. Yeah, it should be able to tuck right inside of it. But getting back to colonial India, the reason the British picked up on this is that the waistcoats they were required to wear with formal wear were just hot and stuffy. And the purpose of a waistcoat for people that know their history on formal wear is to ensure that the connection of the trousers to the shirt is covered. Well, guess what? The kammerband did that with a lot less material. And it was incredibly cooler because it didn't cover the torso. Now, does this mean if you're wearing a kammerband that you are promoting British colonialism? No, I'd say that's a little bit of a stretch. But in today's video, I will share with you a number of garments that you probably wear every day, and yet you didn't know they have a long, storied military history. So, are you ready to dive into today's video? Well, gentlemen, let's get to it. So the next item on this list is the beanie, aka the watch cap. Now, you could argue that this item in various forms has been around for hundreds of years. Homemade knit caps dating back to the 15th, 16th, and 17th century have been found all over the world. But it was the navies around the world in the 20th century that started to manufacture these caps in large numbers and issue them to sailors so that they could wear these when they were on watch. And in case you don't know, watch is basically being on guard. It's century. You're going to see this on ships. You're going to see this in camps. You're going to see this on forts. All over the world, pretty much every military has this. When I was in the Marine Corps, we would have a 24-hour shift. I was the officer of the day, and you would just simply, for 24 hours, you didn't sleep, and you checked everything, and you held your post until you were relieved. Well, getting back to the watch cap, if you're out there on a boat in the North Atlantic, it is friggin' cold, and you got to keep that head warm. So watch caps knitted from wool that fit close to the body and pretty much were a one-size-fit-all became a standard issue item. All of a sudden, manufacturers found that, hey, there's a market for just the average Joe that wants a practical hat to keep his head warm. And boom, to this day, we still wear them. And now it's a classic piece of menswear with a military history. Now, the next item on this list is a shirt going back to the year 1858. And we know this date because this is when the French Navy officially adopted this as their go-to garment. Now, the French call it the marinière. Over here in the United States, we call it the Breton striped shirt. Now, it's a very distinctive shirt. The horizontal stripes really set it apart from most other garments out there. But one thing you may not know about these horizontal stripes is that on a classic Breton shirt, there are 21 stripes going across. And the reason for those stripes is that they mark Napoleon's victories. Now, all that's good and well, but what's the practicality of this shirt? Well, it was believed because of the stripes and the direction of them that if a sailor fell overboard, it would be easier to spot him. Now, for the longest time, it stayed in military circles. It was occasionally used by laborers or guys that got out of the military as a work shirt, but it was Coco Chanel and the French fashion houses in the 1920s and 30s that started to bring this pattern and eventually this shirt to the masses. And yeah, the rest is history. Now, the next item on this list, I know all of you guys have. And I'm always surprised that this one did originate with the US military because it seems like such a simple garment. Now, the reason for the development of this garment is that this is what US military guys used to wear as their underwear. Yeah, not something I'd want to wear in hot weather. Well, in the early 1900s, when the US military started going into tropical environments, they realized this union suit was not going to work. So they cut it in half and they started using that top piece as an item known as the t-shirt. Now, made from a breathable cotton material, they went with white because it was easy to see if it was clean. And using bleach and other cleaners, it was easy to get clean. Although if it did yellow, it wasn't a big deal because it was under a uniform, but the US Navy, was the first of the forces to rapidly adopt this. And by World War II, all the other branches had adopted the t-shirt. And by the 1950s, pretty much every guy out there had a t-shirt that he was wearing at least as an undershirt, although by the 1960s and 70s, some guys even started wearing them as outerwear. By the 1970s, 1980s, we started to see the rise of the graphic tee, and now to this day, it's one of the most commonly worn and sold garments on the face of this planet. Next up on this list, we have khakis and we have chinos. What's the difference? They actually have a different history, but both of them come out of the military. Now, the khakis come out of the British military mid-1800s, and this is when British troops stationed over in India started dyeing their white uniforms this sandy, dusty color. The idea here is that this was a better camouflage, and I also like to think it took stains a little bit better than white. But yeah, this neutral khaki color that worked better with the dusty terrain was adopted and became an official uniform. And the fabric of choice, by the way, was cotton, especially in a twill weave, which if you know your weaves, you know twill is one of the tougher, stronger weaves out there, perfect for a pair of trousers. Now, chinos actually come from the American-Spanish War of 1898, and the word chino refers to Chinese because the pants were apparently made over in China, and that's what they called them. In any case, they were widely adopted, and thanks to their comfortable fit, clean lines, and overall ability to match pretty much anything, the chinos made their way into uniforms and everyday casual wear for a serviceman when he had his days off. And to this day, both khakis and chinos remain a classic part of a man's wardrobe. Now, sticking with pants, let's talk about cargo pants. So as much as the Americans would like to take credit for it, which we did make it popular, it was the British that started it. And they actually started with one pocket on one side of the pants. And the idea here was it provided a place to carry maps and other essential gear. But the Americans, we put it on both sides. And then we started mass producing these pants that had large expandable patch pockets sewn onto the thighs of the trousers. Now, believe it or not, it wasn't until the 1990s that cargo pants started making their way into menswear. Before that, they were only pretty much found in military clothing or surplus stores. But when they hit in the 1990s, they hit with a vengeance. You saw them everywhere. Most of them were pretty loose fits. And we even saw the rise of cargo shorts, which, by the way, I got nothing against cargo shorts. When I'm at Disneyland with my kids on a hot summer day, yeah, you may find me in a pair of cargo shorts. But day-to-day wear, cargo pants, cargo shorts, they are always going to be very casual. And to be honest, I think if you want to dress sharp, there are better options out there. That being said, in the right situation, you're out hunting, you're out orienteering, out exploring, and if you need your hands free, cargo pants or shorts are where it's at. But on a serious note, gents, did you guys know I'm giving away my watch collection? Seriously, if you go over to the watch lever, I have already given away thousands and thousands of dollars in watches and other just cool stuff. Because first up, over the years, I just have accumulated a lot of stuff and I want to get rid of it. And yes, I could sell it, but I want to thank the guys for helping me build up the best watch community on the planet. Seriously, guys, get over to Watch Lever. Check out what we're doing over there. So many details. We've got a great community. We've got tons of free courses. Everything you need to know about watches is right there for you in the classroom. All my best infographics from around the web are right there in one place. And like I said, I'm giving away tons of watches, tons of other accessories, tons of great deals. But honestly, that's not the real reason to join. The reason to join is the people. There are awesome guys in there, watch lovers just like you, that want to share their watch of the day, that want to go deep on the different brands, on what watches they love, what watches they maybe don't love, what their grail watches are, how they got into watch collecting. So gents, I'm putting the link in the description. I'll pin it as the first comment, but just go over to school.com/watch-lover. Yeah, if you just search on Google, you'll find it. It's an awesome community. I want to see you in there. Now, the next item on this list is interesting because initially the only people that were wearing this item were women. It was actually seen effeminate to wear this item until the practicality of war got guys to rethink. What am I talking about? The wristwatch. So wristwatches, yes, they were around in 1890, but guess what? This was a woman's item. But it was the trenches of World War I and having to time items. All of a sudden, people realized, carrying that pocket watch isn't so practical. Having a watch on my wrist that I can immediately look at, that I know is timed with everyone on the units across the front, yeah, that item is indispensable. And it wasn't just the trenches. You look into the air. The first aviation watches, you look at the Santos, that one right there had a large face. It was made to fit right on the wrist so a pilot could, with a quick glance, be able to see the time and understand how much fuel, and with a few other calculations, where he's at on the map. And post-World War I, the wristwatch continued to be a bestseller for men. The history of it being a piece of women's wear disappeared, and by the 1920s, militaries around the world were making it standard issue for their soldiers, sailors, and Marines to be issued watches as needed. Now, this next item goes back to 17th century France, but it wasn't the French that developed it. No, it was the Croatian mercenaries fighting for King Louis VIII. To separate themselves from all the other military units, what they wore around their neck were knotted scarves of a vibrant color. Now, these Croatian soldiers were often called cravats. And besides marking them with color so as to be able to distinguish their military units, these scarves were also used as protection. Now, the French, being French, they were enamored by the colors, by the look, and they adopted it in their court. This eventually evolved into the modern-day cravat, which became a sign of the aristocracy. And by the 19th century, the cravat had evolved into something a bit simpler, what we now know as the necktie. So now, gentlemen, the next time you tie a tie, you understand the connection between what you're putting around your neck and professional soldiers of old school Europe. And speaking of neckties, let's talk about regimental stripes. So this started in the late 19th century, and as neckties became more popular over in England, the idea was what colors and patterns to use and how to be able to distinguish what they meant. Well, an interesting system evolved from the British out of tradition that depending on the military unit you had served with, what schools you had gone to, or what clubs you were a part of, each of these different societies had a different regimental stripe tie that you could wear. And so for some men, if they were going to wear the regimental stripe, they only had one selection. Others would have quite a few. But a huge no-no, a big mistake, is to wear a regimental stripe necktie when you are not part of that regiment. Seriously, they may come up to you and say something if you are wearing a regimental stripe tie and you weren't a part of that unit. Now, in the United States, there are some clubs and there are some regimental stripes out there. We changed it up. Our stripes actually go in the opposite direction as the British ones do, which, by the way, if you know the difference, if you know that detail, let me hear it down in the comments. I love hearing from you guys, and let's see how smart you guys are. Now, this next item, I admit a lot of you guys probably don't own, but I still think it's pretty cool and I wanted to put it on this list. It was these Nepalese soldiers and their officers serving in the warmer parts of Southeast Asia that made this particular garment, these shorts, popular. The distinctive feature of these shorts were that they either had single or double pleats, they had a higher waist, there were no belt loops. Instead, they used side tabs. The shorts were also made from a very lightweight, breathable cotton, and the result is you could get a tailored, very neat, good-looking pair of shorts that you could wear with a uniform shirt and being able to go out there and accomplish mission. These shorts were known as Gurkha shorts. Simple, practical, able to get the job done. Very similar to the Nepalese soldiers that, by the way, you don't want to mess with a Gurkha. Those guys are friggin' badasses. Now, this next item isn't really an item, it's actually a pattern, and I'm sure that many of you guys, when you see it, you know it's military, but you probably don't know its history. What am I talking about? Camouflage. Now, I'm going to give the credit to the French because they were the ones during World War I that took the lead here. And the word camouflage actually is French. It comes from camoufleurs. And these were the artists that worked to develop these patterns, which basically broke up the pattern of the human figure. And that's the purpose of camouflage, is to get rid of the silhouette, to use disruptive color patterns to break up outlines. Now, camouflage pretty much remained a military product till the 1960s. That's when we started to see some of the counterculture adopt camouflage pieces. And by the 1970s, 1980s, we started seeing camouflage break into high fashion. And by the 1990s and 2000s, it started making its way into everyday fashion. Now, I know at this point, some of you guys are like, Antonio, you left off so many things. You bet I did. Come on, I've got other videos in which I go into those other items. Tried to do something new. Guys, continue watching. If you want to learn more about, classic menswear pieces with a military heritage, I've got you covered. I promise there are a number of items in this video I did not cover in this one. So go check it out. Boom, right here.